So let us bring on our guest today and give a hearty and sound good afternoon. Colonel McSally, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
All right. All right. I had to say that I really did stir up the pot when I posted last night up on LinkedIn, and I got everything from, they wholeheartedly support women, to others saying, no, they should be staying home in the kitchen.
Yeah, he's amazing. I've been listening to these arguments my entire, adult life since the day I entered the Air Force Academy in 1984. They just need to get over it. Women are out there fighting on the front lines, in the air, on the ground, in the sea, doing the Lord's work, and they've done an amazing job. So, restricting people as a class, based on gross generalizations is just not what America is all about.
Yeah, well,
better be careful there, Annie. Somebody might, in public, kick you in the jimmy.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Well, first of all, Martha, I'm really happy to have you here. I've been trying to get you for months. Finally got a. First of all, thank you for your service to this country as well as your family. I mean, obviously, your father was a great influence, and people like us are very embedded to you and to many of the troops. That's why we actually dedicate a full 10, 15-minute tribute to a fallen soldier of our show. But let's get right off the bat. Martha, what the hell's happened to the Republicans? Seems like half of them are liberals nowadays. We even had Michelle Bachmann hung up on Annie because they just don't want to be challenged with tough conservative questions nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for myself. And, I'm just charging forward and running in this race. And my 26 years of service, the conservative principles that certainly brought me opportunities and has made this country great are things that I truly believe in. Freedom, opportunity, personal responsibility, free market principles, limited government, and strong national defense. And I'm committed to those, and I'm committed to service, and I'm committed to taking the fight to Washington, D.C. I mean, I think, quite frankly, all of Congress has failed right now on both sides of the aisle, and we need to bring some leadership there to move us forward to address these serious issues facing our country.
Yeah. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What made you decide to enlist?
Well, I went to the Air Force Academy straight out of high school, and as I've mentioned, and Mike mentioned it, my dad died when I was 12, and I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and it had a very deep and profound effect on so much of my life. And I realized very quickly that you can't, every day is a gift, and you can't count on it. You need to make it matter. My dad was a great example of someone who came from humble circumstances and through hard work, getting a good education, serving in the military, and, working his butt off. He was making the country and his community and life for his family better than he was given it. And that was a profound example to me. My mom then went back to school as a widow with 5 kids, and got her master's degree and served as an educator until she retired at the age of 77 just recently. So I, even as a young person, I had those values instilled in me. And honestly, I had no, you make decisions to go to college when you're 18. You don't really know what you're doing, So I went to the Air Force Academy because I wanted to get a good education. I didn't want to go into debt, and I thought the discipline would be good for me because I was a little bit of a rebel, if you can imagine, in high school. And I just thought it would be a great, great way to serve, get a good education, and move forward. And I really had no idea what I was getting into. I never would have imagined I'd be a fighter pilot. I was motion sick when I was a kid. And so I didn't go there thinking, I know, I would get car sick like on the way to swim practice, and if anyone ever told me I'd be a fighter pilot, I would have laughed at them. I was thinking I was going to go to medical school, and so I went there, was in pre-med, but I realized when I got there a number of different factors. One was that my desire to go to medical school was very much tied with my dad's death, and I just had to, work through that and let that go. And, what you're called to do and what your skills and talents are not necessarily were associated with that for me. So I had to realize that and move on from it. And also, quite frankly, I became incredibly motivated because they told me that I couldn't be a fighter pilot. At the time, it was against the law. And that just pissed me off. And I just became very determined that I was going to be a fighter pilot someday. And, it worked out.
No, actually, it sounds like you and I have very, very similar personalities, but I'm slightly older than you, and I grew up graduating in the 70s, and I almost went into the Navy, but I realized at that point my temperament was that I'd probably end up in the brig because I probably would have decked a commanding officer somewhere along the way. So
Well,
instead,
yeah.
I put myself through college, and I ended up going into business. But years later, because everyone said, "Oh, cops can only be guys," I ended up becoming a New York City cop much
Oh,
later
very
in
cool.
life. And
Very cool.
so it seems like when someone says you can't do something, we kind of like look at it and go, "Oh yeah, watch me."
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people who know me well know that's exactly what you need to motivate me is tell me there's a mountain I can't climb, tell me there's something that can't be changed, and that definitely just gets me going. And I mean, you guys know the story that they took on the Pentagon about 10 years ago because they were making our women wear Muslim garb in Saudi Arabia. It's a very sort of similar story. I spent 6 years trying to get this policy change. It was a U.S. military policy,
Okay.
but everybody kept saying it was way above their pay grade, and
It
the State
seems like
Department. Go ahead. Are
I'm
you
sorry.
there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying, for 6 years I tried to fight this battle, and they just wouldn't change the policy. And then they ordered me over to Saudi Arabia, and then they threatened to court-martial me if I didn't wear the burqa myself. And, I tried within the system to get this thing fixed, but my oath of office as an officer is only to the Constitution of the United States, and I take that very seriously.
Amen.
And from the day I entered the Air Force Academy, I was told that being a leader and an officer means you got to stand up for what's right, and you got to be true to your oath only, even if that means you need to stand alone. And you don't just wake up in the morning and decide, very easily that you're going to file McSally versus Donald Rumsfeld in court. But that's eventually what ended up happening after 6+ years of the Defense Department failing to address this unconstitutional policy that was bad for good order and discipline and the mission and everything all the way around. So, as we were working its way through the courts, I actually had worked on Capitol Hill for a year for Senator Kyle. And I took what I knew for getting legislation passed, and I got drafted legislation, got sponsors on both sides of the aisle, both houses, and got this thing signed into law. The whole thing was an 8-year battle. But, I got a lot of endurance. I've run the Ironman triathlon and lots of marathons, and when other people quit, I'm going to keep going. And we need that right now in D.C.
Yeah, and you were
Good
also
for you. Good for you. Martha, I was so proud when I watched that video. Honestly, I was like throwing my fists in the air and just like, I was like your biggest cheerleader. And I'm not sure how I actually got onto your campaign, but like when I watched videos of you and many of the other veterans who are now running, whose loyalty is to the Constitution of the United States, you not find a bigger fan than Annie and myself of people who follow the Constitution. And you know what? That says everything about what kind of person you are as far as standing up to these people, because political correctness just sickens me. And to see you do that absolutely put me on your I'm one of your biggest cheerleaders, although I'm in Michigan, Annie's in South Carolina. I am one of your biggest cheerleaders, not to mention your dog is beautiful as well.
Everybody loves my dog. Yeah, for those who don't know the context, I have a golden retriever, and back in June, just suddenly, she seriously almost died of pancreatitis. Actually, quite frankly, she should have died. It's a miracle she's alive. And so I was posting updates on her status in those critical times, and I got more comments on the status of Penelope than I did of the Supreme Court decision on Obamacare. So, yeah, he's a cool dog.
All right, you live in a state that's been challenged about voter ID as well as illegal immigrants. Now we have the same issue here in South Carolina where they're trying to overturn voter ID. But it makes absolutely no sense. As a matter of fact, yesterday I went to have a cell phone for my husband switched over to a new phone, the service from the old phone into the new phone. I had to show ID. So what is the problem with asking someone when you do a car stop for identification, or if they're going to go into a voter booth, asking for them for identification?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll talk specifically about the immigration issues and realize these are state laws. I mean, my focus as I'm looking to Washington, D.C. is what is the federal government failing to do? And right now, the states are stepping in because the federal government is failing. They're sort of failing to secure our border. They're failing to have real immigration reform that's, addresses keeping, nuclear physicists here that we train and give PhDs to, and then they head back, to India and China to use their skills. I mean, the federal government just is failing in so many ways. And so I am very much focused on, obviously these are states issues, but what needs to happen in the federal government is that they step up, they man up, they woman up, and they start addressing these issues so that we can, not have them be stagnating and dealt with, have the states have to deal with these issues because the federal government is failing.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
So, Martha, when did the lightning strike? When did you say, what the hell with this? I'm running. What happened? Walk us through that.
It's a pretty amazing story. I mean, as I mentioned, as a major, I worked for Senator Kyle as a legislative fellow. And, I mean, as a military officer, you're always involved in, strategic level, public policy, national defense. I mean, I have 2 master's degrees, one from Harvard in public policy and then one from the Air War College. So I've always been a public servant and very much, involved in public policy. When I worked for Senator Kyle, it really opened my eyes that there are good people that are smart, that are principled, that are hardworking, that are in D.C. trying to make a difference, and that stuck with me. And many people said over the course of my career that someday as I retire that I should consider running for office. And to be honest with you, I was very ambivalent about that because I'm not political. I say what I mean what I say. I'm authentic. I don't like spinning and pivoting and, all that kind of stuff. I just like getting things done, fixing things that are broken, making things that are wrong right. And so I didn't have this desire like someday this is what I want to be. I just, I have a fire in my belly to make a difference. I have a fire in my belly to serve my country. I care deeply about it. And so I retired in 2010. I was then serving as a professor of national security studies at a place called the Marshall Center in Garmisch, Germany. And so I was continuing to serve my country, teaching and training government officials from all over the world. And something started happening in that year, a year and a half I was there, where my students from all over the world were making statements that were just sort of a given, like America's on the decline. And I heard that many times. America's on the decline, militarily, economically, diplomatically. We've gone from a bipolar world to a unipolar world, and now America's on. And it just broke my heart to hear that. And I started to really feel like, I'm so disgusted with what's going on right now in Washington, D.C. I was complaining about it. I was not, disengaged from it. And I looked myself in the mirror and said, you know what, you're an athlete, you're not a spectator. Do something about it. So as we went through this horrible tragedy in our community here with the shooting on January 8th last year where my Congresswoman, Gabby Giffords, was shot, and just a horrible tragedy, by the summer there was speculation as to whether she was going to run again or not. So I started looking into it, whether I would be the right person to come home and serve and whether I was the right person for the community, to represent them. And there were too many variables to say, keep doing what you're called to do until you're called to do something different. And on January 22nd, when she stepped down, that was the initial moment of, Martha, it's time to come home and serve in this way. And but I was very ambivalent. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do this. So that was a Sunday. By Thursday night, I bought my ticket home, but I bought it round trip because I said, all right, I'm just going to investigate it, see if it's technically feasible, am I electable, and am I convicted and called to duty to do this. I needed 3 green lights. And on Saturday, I flew back. I arrived 1 o'clock Sunday morning, and by the time I got home, I just felt so strongly in my gut that this is exactly what I was convicted and called to do. I got up Monday morning at 4 a.m., I resigned my professorship, and I never looked back.
Wow. Now you're running against Barbara. He was the aide to Gabby Gifford, and he was quoted as saying that the Republican Party is the party of the white man. Is that true?
Well, I was actually in an editorial board interview with him when he made these statements, and he's now, sort of treading back on them. But, he was sitting right there, and basically when they asked him, why are you a Democrat, he was saying, generally Republicans and their candidates are the big money. So first he was talking about big money, big corporation, kind of candidates. And then he said, the Democrats are, we're a big tent. We variety of ethnicities and races and religions. And I look across the aisle, and quite frankly, I see a bunch of white guys. And I literally was sitting there, and this has been sort of a theme in this campaign. Barbara was a staffer and an aide who was elected to serve out Gabby Giffords' term. And he was originally not even going to run in November. It was just about being a caretaker of the term that she was elected to. He went to D.C., he got a taste of it, he changed his mind, now he's running in November, and he's immediately become a politician, and he's using the talking points of his party bosses, and they're just not sticking in this race. So here I am in this editorial meeting, and I'm just flabbergasted. It wasn't supposed to be a debate or responses, but I couldn't help myself. I was like, and the people on the board were also like, wow, did he just say that? And I said, Ron, excuse me. I mean, I didn't say you're the white guy, but I said, I'm your Republican nominee, and I'm a woman retired military officer. I mean, how can you get away with saying that? And, he's just hasn't backpedaled, or apologized or anything, but he's, continuing to say, well, his response was, well, I meant Congress. And I said, well, I'm going to be there soon. So, but I mean, this is we're seeing it through this whole campaign. He is just coming out, with the typical talking points. Martha's a Republican, therefore she's against the middle class. I'm like, Ron, I'm in the middle class, like I'm a retired military officer, served my country for 26 years. I believe we need to put people back to work. We got to get small businesses hiring again. We got to get the uncertainty taken out of the economic situation. Congress keeps kicking the can on the tax and the regulatory scheme and the debt that's piling up. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, I'm a champion in the middle class. Let's stop this class warfare rhetoric and divisiveness, and let's actually get this country moving again. So, yeah, he is my opponent, and he's a nice man who has been a lifelong bureaucrat. We have a very clear contrast here between a leader and a follower, a commander and a bureaucrat, a pioneer and a staffer. The contrast couldn't be more stark between the options that people who live in Arizona have right now.
Yeah, no. I see him as a follower and a lackey because basically, as I was studying, I mean, I don't know him in the same manner you do, but clearly he is a puppet of the party. And I find it amazing that Democrats just love to say, it's all white men. That's their favorite. That's their favorite statement. But they never can really back that up because if you think about it, they've been using that statement for 30, 40 years now. And the bottom line is that it is actually like I was looking at some of the blogs. Just some of the name call. They drag stuff about you that couldn't even be possibly true if remote. And that all of a sudden name calling.
This is not helpful. It's not helpful. This is, congressional, approval rating is less than 10% for a reason. This is not helpful. This is not solving the debt. This is not putting one person back to work. This is not securing our border. This is not reforming health care to make it affordable and available. It's not making our education system better. For crying out loud, stop the rhetoric and let's sit down and figure out how to solve these problems because there's too much at stake. Hey, I got to get on another radio show, unfortunately. I wish I could stay with you longer, but I think I'm 2 minutes late for them.
Oh, well, it has been a pleasure, Colonel Sally. And you know what? After you conquer Congress, I see you heading to the White House.
Oh, for crying out loud! We got 38 days to go. Let's just win let's just win this seat, and I'm ready to fight and serve in Washington D.C. right now for the people of Southern Arizona.
You ever need any muscle? You just give Cool Mike a call. We don't kick anyone in the jimmy, but we smack them around real good down there in D.C.
Yeah, okay. So here's a quick update. If anyone of your listeners wants to support, we would love it. My website is marthamcsally.com, marthamcsally.com. I mean, we are doing great. We are neck and neck with Barbara right now, and as of a couple days ago, the DCCC and Pelosi's PAC shifted money from other races to come against me in this race because they know that his job is in jeopardy, and they know that he's not going to win. So it's fights on, and we need all the support that we can get from anybody out there to please invest in our race so that we can win this thing.
Go, Martha, go.
Okay, thanks, guys.
That is Martha McSally, everyone, Colonel, United States Air Force.
All right,
Amen.
take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much.